What's up? Welcome to a special edition of Chatt It Up Sports with yours truly, Greg Larnard, former host of The Word with G on ESPN Chattanooga. Here solo dolo tonight. We are bringing you a special conversation. Here we've been really focusing a lot on college football and the playoff and spending some time on the NFL and the NFL playoffs and some of the fun things that we've seen there in terms of the NFL and just all the football that's been going on. And yeah, we've talked about the Vols. We talked a lot about the football team. We'll mention them obviously with things going on and them getting Amari Jefferson and some transfer portal things. And we've mentioned them slightly when it comes to basketball season, but I thought it would be fun to get a little deeper into the weeds when it comes to the college basketball season, specifically when it comes to the 17-2 Tennessee Volunteers. This team has been a lot of fun to watch, and I know a lot of us have been kind of enamored with all the football and things like that. And as my guest and I were talking off the air, that the college basketball season begins the Monday after the Super Bowl. That's always very true and very prevalent, but excited to get into the Vols and talk about the basketball season. We're also going to talk a little bit about the baseball season, which is about a month away as well. So a lot of good things going on in Tennessee Vol land. But before we get there and before we talk to our special guest, just want to let you know, give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Mike's Hole in the Wall, Chattanooga's favorite place for sippers, beer lovers, game day fans, families, professionals, and people that love great food. All since 2008. They've been around for a very long time. They've changed locations a couple of times, but they're at 535 Cherokee Boulevard on Tennessee's downtown on the North Shore. And they've obviously got you hooked up for game day. And obviously there's only a couple more NFL games left with the playoffs because it's coming up this Sunday, specifically with the championship rounds. But go on down there. Again, great food, great atmosphere. The staff is incredibly friendly. They're always greeting you, always asking you how things are going, and keeping you well fed and well served as well. Again, all since 2008. And don't forget, they have the largest dog-friendly patio in the city of Chattanooga. And yes, they do have it enclosed. They've got heaters in there. It stays decently warm unless it's like 17 degrees out, which we were out there the other night. So, yeah, all the good things from Mike's Hole in the Wall. Do it now. Check it. Do it now. Thank me later. Check them out. Again, 535 Cherokee Boulevard in downtown Chattanooga, Tennessee on the North Shore. All right. Well, with that being said, our conversation is coming up with a man who is a loyal Tennessee Volunteer follower, a VFL himself, having graduated from the University of Tennessee. He covers the team for Rocky Top Insider, and he's actually here when we're recording this on a Vol Talk Thursday. Oh, it's got me in my feels. I'm feeling very reminiscent, just like the old days for ESPN Chattanooga on The Word with G. Joining us now, the one, the only, Mr. Ryan Schumpert. What's up, Shump?
Oh, not much. That's a beautiful sounding phrase right there. Vol Talk Thursday. It's been too long since I've heard that. So glad to be able to come on and chat it up a little bit.
Man, 3 years strong, and I see what you did there. Chat it up. I appreciate the cheap plug. That's always good. You're a true professional, as always. All right, let's get into the basketball season. As I kind of previewed, I want to go talk basketball, but I also want to talk a little baseball as well, with that kind of ramping up in the Tennessee Volunteers coming off of their national championship season. But quick, first, I need a quick little overview on how the season's gone. In your estimation, up to this point, exceeded expectations, met expectations. I can't imagine it's below your expectations or what you expected at 17-2. And I know that they're 4-2 in the conference and sit currently at fourth. They do seem to be playing at a very much slower pace this season. But for all those people that have been so enamored with the college football and the NFL and haven't really paid much attention to the Tennessee Volunteers, great start to their basketball season. Give us a little overview.
Definitely, exceeded expectations mildly to moderately, I guess. Overly crazy, but I think the thing that stands out probably is how quickly Tennessee hit the ground running. They have 3 new starters that they added in the transfer portal, and you're obviously talking about a team that lost Dalton Connect, lost some veterans and Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi that were a big part of things for a long time, lost their front court to the portal and Jonas Aidoo and Tobe Awaka, and hit the ground running. And with plugging some guys in the portal, Chaz Lanier at shooting guard, Igor Milicic Jr., Felix Okpara, the 3 of Tennessee's 4 transfers in the starting lineup. And a little bit of a lighter non-conference schedule this year for Tennessee. I mean, they still played what they normally do, 6 of their 13 non-conference games against like Power 5 opponents, but some really bad Power 5 teams in there when you look at Miami and you look at Syracuse. But really 3 solid teams they played in non-conference play. They played at Louisville early, won that game handedly. Louisville, I think it's like, as of right now, 7-8 game winning streak in the top 25. They beat Baylor, who's been kind of in and out of the top 25 in the Bahamas in one of those early season tournaments. And then they won probably their best win of the year, one of the best wins anybody had in non-conference play. They won at Illinois, who's like a fringe top 10 team. So I think that aspect, they really exceeded expectations. You said at 4-2 in SEC play. And just a conference, it's a grind. They lost their first game of the year at Florida. I don't think losing that game was any surprise with Florida being a top 10 team. Obviously, they got really destroyed in that game. That was a little bit of a surprise. And really, I think the only blemish you would say on Tennessee's season to this point, they lost at Vanderbilt last Saturday in a game that came down to the wire, and then they really just did not play well on the defensive side of the ball, which is obviously Tennessee's bread and butter under Rick Barnes, and they lost that one close. But Vanderbilt, a team that's on the bubble, competing to make the NCAA tournament, obviously Memorial Gymnasium, a tough place to play, a place that most years it feels like Tennessee's in a close game at, no matter how much that Vanderbilt team is struggling. So one kind of disappointment, not a perfect team by any means. They're 6th in the AP poll right now. I think that's generally about where I'd say they are, somewhere in that 6 to 10 range. I think definitely a top 10 team, not one of the very best teams in the sport, but not too far behind them. So a good start to the season, and they're right here as we talk in mid-January with everything out in front of them, and still a chance to be a 1 seed, still a chance to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, and try to get to that elusive Final Four.
Yeah, that's certainly what we like when it comes to the Tennessee Volunteers and all the things that have gone on with them. Let's talk a little bit specifically about their main scorer in Chaz Lanier. He came out of the gates looking like the reincarnation of Dalton Connect, but then seemed to sort of maybe play with a little hesitation, in the middle of the season, and how things have kind of been going for him. But he let it rip a little bit against Mississippi State. I think he knocked down 5 threes in that game. What have you thought of his game, and what do you see from him as sort of the leading man for Tennessee?
Well, he's a guy that really had exceeded my expectations. I mean, he was the crown jewel with Tennessee's transfer portal class. Really the only guy that was like super highly ranked. I think he was kind of fringe top 10. He took a good pay cut in NIL to come to Tennessee over BYU, who was offering him just a crazy amount of money. And even Kentucky was offering him more than Tennessee was. Nashville kid, and one of the most efficient scorers in the transfer portal, one of the best shooters in the transfer portal. And Tennessee, fortunately, is a pretty media-friendly program, so we get to watch a good bit of practice before the season. And doing that and talking to some people, you saw the shooting. Is like, yeah, this guy's a really good shooter. But when you're talking about a guy that is in some ways, not anybody ever expected him to be Dalton Connect, but he's trying to fill that scoring void in some ways. He doesn't score off the bounce, and he doesn't create off the dribble the way Dalton Connect could. So I expected him to be like a 13 to 15 points per game guy. He entered SEC play as the conference's leading scorer. I think just under 21 points. He's now, I want to say, down to like around 18. And you said it, really a handful game stretch where he struggled in SEC play. I guess a 4-game stretch. Florida, Texas, Georgia, those first 3 games, he shot the ball poorly. At Vanderbilt, he actually shot the ball well. I think hit 4 or 6 threes, but had 5 turnovers, some bad mistakes, and then obviously missed he had 2 free throws down by 2 in the last 3 seconds in that game at Vanderbilt, and made the first one, missed the second one. So really disappointing ending there for him. And I think that's the name of the game is that he doesn't have. He's maybe not as diverse as a scorer as Dalton Connect is, which, I mean, who is? You talk about a 3-level scorer who could score off the dribble with both hands, catch and shoot, all that. He's more of a catch and shoot guy. He can score some in the mid-range, but he doesn't quite have the athleticism. And look, he's 6'3", he's not 6'6". So getting to the basket and scoring is not necessarily a strength of his. So you see when his shot's not falling, less answers, I guess, to be able to score at a high rate. And certainly he is guy number one. You said it. He's the leading guy for Tennessee. He's guy number 1 on every scouting report. People are trying to take away his freedom of movement, be very physical with him. So I think it's been an adjustment for him in SEC play. I think you continue to see him get a little bit more comfortable. And for so much of the year, I mean, going after Arkansas, which was the SEC opener, he scored 29. I think he was shooting like 48% from three, and it didn't seem like he ever missed shots when he was open,
Yeah.
or semi-open. So to me, I still have a good confidence level that he's going to get back to shooting at a really high clip, and get back to being a pretty reliable scorer for Tennessee. He's just not Dalton Connect, which nobody really is. It's hard to think he is, or it's hard to expect that out of anybody. So a little bit more limited in what he can do, but I still will contest one of the best shooters in the entire country, and a guy I expect to build off what he did against Mississippi State and kind of continue to bounce back from what was a pretty rough 2-week stretch for him.
Certainly big shoes to fill when it comes to Dalton Connect, but you mentioned obviously the scoring ability is there, the shooting ability, but maybe not off the dribble creation like we saw from Dalton Connect. But I guess my question is just sort of thinking about the way you just answered that would be okay, they don't have Dalton Connect. You thought maybe Chaz Lanier was going to be like Dalton Connect, and he's been a version of Dalton Connect, but not quite the three-level scorer that Dalton was, like you talked about. What is the hope of the optimism for a Tennessee fan to say, all right, this team feels like they can make a run to the Final Four without a guy like that? Would that mean that you feel like this is a deeper team than they had last year, a more well-rounded team than they had last year?
Definitely not deeper as a whole, but I think well-rounded is a good word when you
Okay.
consider scoring options. And I mean, look, it's the the downside, which is a funny thing to say about you have a guy like Dalton Connect, is it ends up being a lot of guys, standing around, and it can be hard to get in a rhythm. I think you saw that with Santiago Vescovi, who had really the worst year of his Tennessee career in his
Yeah.
last year, when what Tennessee was asking him to do changed a lot. And Tennessee has a lot of options. It's really a 7-man consistent rotation. Darlington Dubar plays anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes a night as that 8th man. But there is shooting there. There is a lot of guys that can hit from deep. When you talk about really Igor Felix Okpara and Cade Phillips are not 3-point shooters, but everybody else that plays, can shoot the ball at least a little bit. And you've seen pretty balanced scoring behind Shaz. I think it's 4 guys. 4 guys between 10 points and 12.5 points per game right now. So a lot of different options. The defense is what it has been, what it consistently is. And look, the offense, I think this is the thing that's probably sneaky to anyone that's hasn't watched a ton of them yet. This point, the offense has been good. You said it at the start. They're playing at an extremely slow pace, which, great. I mean, that's more what most Rick Barnes teams have done. Last year was really the outlier because you have a guy like Dalton Connect and obviously a really good point guard in Sakai, and Josiah could push the ball at the 4 spot. This year's team, when you look at KenPom offensive efficiency, has been better than last year. I think Tennessee last year finished like 29 in adjusted offensive efficiency. They're 23rd at this point in the season. So they've scored at an efficient clip on that end of the court. A lot of it is because of that shooting. It's just that they're playing at one of the slowest tempos in the entire country and the slowest tempo in the SEC. So they're not putting up a ton of points, but they've been efficient. The defense is what it essentially always is under Rick Barnes. And they're kind of a boring team to watch. Like, they're very methodical. They know who they are, which I think in a lot of ways is a very good thing. And is, again, what's impressive when you consider the newcomers. Very plodding around is what I would say. So when they hit shots, which for the most part they shot the ball pretty well from the perimeter, they've looked really good, and that they have been able to score at a pretty efficient clip on that end of the court.
Yeah, they certainly have been, and I know you mentioned Felix Okpara not really being a shooter, but my man's shooting 1,000 or 100% from three
He
after
is.
he dropped that one against Mississippi State. So I mean, I'm just saying.
It's a great point. And Rick Barnes jokes. He said he needs to make sure he doesn't take any more. Like Danny White, I think in Notre Dame in his playing career, shot 100% from the field and as a walk on. So, I mean that was crazy. And man, I was talking about it with somebody because look, I don't think Tennessee would have lost the game, but they were up like 18 at halftime and had gotten to 7 real quick.
Yeah.
And hits that 3 and never got back to single digits again. And I was talking about it with somebody. It's like that's the beauty of college basketball, where no team on the road ever makes that shot. You never get a break like that when you're playing on the road. But when you're at home, you get those breaks like that, and all's going well. And you just just what you just did, you kind of have to shrug if you're on the other side of it.
Just like the guy who beat Michael Jordan in that quarters game. You know?
That's right.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. I want to talk about Zakai Ziegler a little bit now. But what have you thought about the way Z's played this season? Seems like he's sort of like the same bulldog, steady guy he's been since he's arrived, and obviously, like I know he's improved, and he went from a bench guy, and then he got into more of a scorer and then a starter, and now he's more of a scoring guard, and he still distributes and things like that, and I saw an article, I think it was you that wrote, talking about Coach Barnes and, even recently talked about how much he's meant not only to the program, but to him personally as well. Talk to me a little bit about Z and what Coach Barnes had to say about his impact.
Yeah, on that front, on the Coach Barnes front, like there's no inside intel here or anything, but Rick Barnes talks a lot like a guy that's going to retire from coaching basketball when Sky Ziegler moves on. He's made a lot of quotes that sound that way this season, and on the surface, and I would still say that's probably this year. Obviously, this guy's a senior. One thing I would say that's worth tracking for everybody is the vote from the NCAA. It sounds like it's probably going to happen at some point where they just make a blanket 5 years policy where everybody has 5 years to play. I think they're voting on it this spring. We'll see if that gets approved in time for it to matter for Tennessee and Zakai, and even a guy like Jordan Gainey and Jemai Mashak. That would really affect Tennessee basketball a lot, even past Zakai. Igor Milicic is a guy that would have another year of eligibility because of that. Still think he might go pro, but all that to say, Zakai he is kind of what he is. You said it. He's the safety blanket for Rick Barnes. He's incredibly steady. Last year his numbers I think were kind of scaled down or diluted from the fact that he played really poorly the first month of the season when he was coming back from the torn ACL. He was significantly better. You look at his numbers, I think he averaged like 14 and 7 in SEC play last year. And he hasn't shot the ball great to this point in the season. I think it's around like 30%. It was lower than that entering SEC play. He shot it better once conference plays got going. But again, you look up at SEC play at this point, he's averaging like 13 and a half points, just shy of seven assists a game. So he's the guy running the show. And you say he's the same guy, the pit bull on defense. He had 5 steals the other night against Mississippi State, who headed a snake on defense, as every opposing coach will say about him. So he is that guy. I think what has been important is he's played at a really consistent level. I think more consistent than he did last year. Not that he was radically inconsistent or anything, but a handful of poor performances mixed in there. I can think of like 3 or 4 in SEC play. To this point, we're just 6 games in, I guess, but to this point, he's really been solid every time out. Obviously, nobody played particularly well at Florida, but I didn't think he was awful in that game or anything like that. And that's important, I think, because you don't have a Dalton Connect. You don't have, even though these guys weren't overly consistent, but Josiah and Santi, guys that were veterans. He's the veteran on this team. He's the lead guy. Tennessee needs him to lead from the front every night. And not that he shot it amazing every night, but he's been solid for Tennessee. And you look at some of their big wins in SEC play, at least the close games. The Georgia game they were down by 1 at halftime. He took that game over. Texas A&M game was very tight, and he was really, really good down the stretch of that game. Texas game, I might have said Georgia game twice. The Texas game, he took it over down the stretch, and that's what Tennessee's going to need from him. They're going to need him to be that lead guy and the guy that they can depend on night in, night out, and then in the second half, close games. And he was really good against Vanderbilt too, even though they lost that game. He was arguably the best player on the court despite the loss.
Yeah, he's been exceptional this year, and just as I mentioned, just sort of very steady when it comes to Zakai and his play. And it'll be interesting to see if Coach Barnes decides to hang it up when Zakai goes. But this is what we have you on for. I need that insider information, that behind the doors, behind the scenes intel.
Yeah, no, it's that's kind of always been my thought, is that he would do that, and then. Yeah. He's such a pro he's such a pro not pro COVID. He's such a pro portal guy. He loves the portal in the sense of like he's too old to care about recruiting high school kids for 2 years and not getting them. But when he can go all in recruiting a kid for 2 weeks and it's like, you don't get them. You put 2 weeks into recruiting them. It's not like it's that big of an energy deal. Mm-hmm. He likes that a lot, and I think he likes the plug and play nature of those guys that have been through the battles a little bit more and know what to expect out of college basketball. So where a lot of coaches have older coaches, legendary coaches have retired in large part because of the portal, and I'm sure Rick doesn't love every part of it. Heck, he had a player quit in the middle of December. I know he didn't love that, but while he doesn't love all of it, I think generally speaking, he likes the way that it affects the calendar a little bit. And if he does retire, I don't think it'll be because of a hatred for the portal or just the way the games change or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. I remember you and I talking about that on my show a year ago or so at this point, talking about the basketball and just his love and, the simplicity of going out there and not investing 2 years and only having 2 weeks to invest into somebody in the plug and play stuff, like you said. So, yeah, that could keep him around a little bit longer. We'll have to wait and see. I want to talk about the big man in the middle. No Adu, no problem really. Felix Okpara has been, a real fit here with this team. A nice addition, especially on the defensive front, anchoring the defense. Talk to me a little bit about his addition, the impact that he's made on this team.
For sure, he was a guy that it was pretty simple what he brought Tennessee, which was really good on defense, elite shot blocker. He was one of, I believe, 7 players nationally last season that blocked 80 shots. And then offensively, not a lot of diversity to his skill set. You're not going to throw him the ball with his back to the basket a ton. He's not going to step – well, he did step out and hit a three-pointer, but he's not going to step out and shoot a lot of 15-footers. But he's a freak athlete, man, and a really, really good lob threat around the rim, which makes him a good pairing with Sakai. Honestly, a guy I was disappointed in non-conference play. Probably the one guy in the rotation that I would say really had failed to meet my expectations. But it felt like he started to play better. They had 3 bye games after that Illinois game. They played Miami and Illinois the same week. He was not good in either of those games. And they had 3 bye games into SEC play. He played well in those bye games, and he's been really good in SEC play. To this point, he's averaging 9.7.2 rebounds and 2.3 blocks. He had in 13 non-conference games, he had 3 games with 3+ blocks. Now in 6 SEC games, he's got 4 games with 3+ blocks. And, that's what I expected him to be. Great protecting the rim, solid on the glass, and good at cleaning up the trash and being a really good lob threat. So he's not a guy with a super high ceiling. And I think that's why it was maybe disappointing that his floor in non-conference play looked lower than I thought it was. I mean, he had as good as an offseason as anybody for Tennessee basketball after transferring in from Ohio State. But it feels like he's getting more and more comfortable in what Tennessee's asking him to do, getting more and more comfortable playing with Zakai and everybody else on this team. And he's been a big part of it. I would say right after, when you look at these 6 SEC games, right after Zakai, he's probably been Tennessee's most consistent, if not their best player.
Yeah, he has been really good and really effective for this team. And as you've alluded to many times, the backbone of a Rick Barnes team is that defense. So having Felix Okpara there has been awesome. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other guys on this team, outside of the guys that we've already talked about with Lanier and Okpara and Zakai. Who's been the biggest surprise in your eyes? And also on the other end of that scale, maybe the biggest disappointment for you so far this season?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think from my standpoint, surprise would be Cade Phillips, who's been the backup 5. JP Estrella had season-ending foot injury, had a season-ending foot surgery back in November, which has led Phillips, who played very scarcely last year. Yeah.
Words are hard sometimes.
Yeah, words can be difficult. Last season as a true freshman, and he's just been really solid. Like, he's undersized for the 5 spot, and there will be some games where that's probably a problem. Saturday, if Janai Broom plays, will probably be one of them. But for the most part, he's been really good there, solid defensively. Again, a really good athlete, a great offensive rebounder. I think has been a big thing for him. So he's just played and filled that role. Like, if you had told me back in, we'll say June, when the team was set, that JP Estrella would basically not play this year, I'd been really worried about the front court. And it hasn't been as big as an issue. It gives them a little bit less flexibility in how they can play, which is obviously a big thing when you talk about matchups in the NCAA tournament. That could come back to bite them. But as a whole, I don't think it's killed them a ton. I think from maybe the outside perspective, and maybe Jordan Gainey, he's been more consistent this year. But I kind of thought that would be the case. He was a guy that breakout probably isn't the right word that I used for him, but I just thought he was going to be more consistent. Obviously, he struggled a ton in SEC play last year, but I thought he had turned the corner a little bit towards the end of the season, played well in the NCAA tournament, and just looked a lot more comfortable and stuff this offseason, and that's been the case. He's not a star. He's not amazing, but he's been pretty steady for Tennessee as that third guard behind Chaz and Zakai Ziegler. And obviously, he had the big Illinois game that Tennessee doesn't win. I mean, Tennessee winning that game really defies all logic given how little Zakai and Chaz played with foul trouble. And Jordan Gainey was a big reason why. So those would be two. I mean, those are two returning guys. I think, from a disappointment standpoint, it would probably be Jemai Mashak. And look, like the offense has not been great for him. And you're seeing more and more teams stag off of him and dare him to shoot the ball, which has become a little bit of a problem in starting lineup because Felix Okpara is not a shooter. So you kind of have two non-shooters out there to a degree. Obviously, Jemai can shoot a little bit more than Felix, but that's been an issue with the spacing and all that stuff they have to work around. But as a whole, like, look, I kind of came into the season. Jemai is who he is. Like, he's not a scorer. I'm not expecting him to become a good offensive player all of a sudden. You just need him to be not a net negative and have a handful of games where he gives you some production. I think to me what's been more disappointing once we've gotten into SEC play is that he's just not affecting the game on the defensive end the same way that we're accustomed to. Not that he's been bad. He hasn't been bad defensively, but I think he has like maybe 3 of 6 SEC games now. He hasn't recorded a steal or a block. At Florida and at Vanderbilt, he was not, taking an opposing guard out of the game. Again, not that he was just bad defensively in those games, but he wasn't great. And when you're going to live with that offense not being great, and just to me, again, it kind of is what it is. You need the trade-off to be elite defense. So Tennessee, to me, needs more from him. He played well against Mississippi State the other night. That's a step in the right direction. But he's a senior. He's a guy that's been here for 4 years, like Zakai. Tennessee needs more consistency from him. And I guess the last guy that I'll note is Igor Milicic. I think that's really the last guy, main rotation guy we haven't talked about. To me, he's the X factor. Talk about a 6'10" guy that can shoot the ball from the perimeter and put the ball on the floor a little bit too and score. It just feels like offensively, night in, night out, you don't know exactly what you're going to get from him. But he's the guy, I think, when he looks good offensively in the spacing that can provide, when he plays the 5 spot sometimes too because of that Estrella injury, Tennessee's offense can look really good. Like when Tennessee runs, I think I saw this the other day, and I might have the stat a little bit off, but when Tennessee runs the lineup with Zakai, Chaz Lanier, Jordan Gainey, Igor Milicic, and really Okpara or Cade Phillips at the 5, Tennessee's averaging something like 1.3 points per possession, which is a very, very high clip. And when Igor's making shots and you have 3 other shooters at the guard spot around him and Okpara is a lob threat, that's when you see Tennessee's offense look really, really efficient and really good. So he would be the guy that I would circle as really, to me, the X factor for this team. When he's playing well on the offensive end, Tennessee, I think, is a very tough guard.
All right, last thing, Shump, on the basketball side of things, there's a big matchup coming up on Saturday against Auburn. I don't know Broom's status, for this weekend. Obviously, he's out of the boot. He hasn't really jumped and dove back into practice. So, Bruce Pearl is the old wily vet, kind of keeping it under wraps, not really sure if he's going to play on Saturday. But regardless of that, what should we watch out for when it comes to the Tigers, and what does Tennessee have to do to win, in your opinion?
I think for Tennessee to win, they just have to be really good defensively. I mean, Auburn's not only the best offensive team in the country, they're one of the best offensive teams in the country we've seen the last 10 years in college basketball. And if this thing turns into a track meet, Tennessee will not be able to keep up on the road. I just don't think that's possible. So Tennessee needs to be able to dictate the terms of the game a little bit, be really good on defense, keep the game in the 70s if they're going to have a chance to win. And then, it's all the normal stuff. The SEC, from a rebounding standpoint this year, is just incredible. It feels like half the league is in the top 40 nationally in offensive rebounding rate. Tennessee is sitting there, I think, 6th or 7th right now. So they need to be able to do that, and that's been a big part of the offensive success too. On the flip side, they have not been very good, or they've been very average defensive rebounding. And Auburn, especially if they have Broom, but even if they don't, they're a very physical team. They're good on the glass. So Tennessee's going to have to match that. I'm skeptical of their chances even if Broom doesn't play, because I just think Auburn's really, really good. And to go on the road in a tough place to play, Tennessee's going to have to play their A-plus game to get a win. And maybe I'm a little battered and bruised by I've not covered a Tennessee win at Neville Arena. I think they're 0-3, 0-4 They've blown some big leads in those games. They lost to a bad Auburn team to miss the NCAA tournament one of those years. So maybe a little skeptical from that, but man, Auburn's a really good team. I think the best team in the country, and going to be a really difficult task for Tennessee on Saturday night.
So maybe what you're saying is you should not make that trip.
I already got my plans booked. And it's not just me. Tennessee hasn't won. I think Tennessee's 1-4 at Auburn under Rick.
Oof.
They won. It's a funny story actually, because this is before I was covering the team. I think they played down there Rick's second year, I guess it would have been, which is Bruce's third year. And Grant Ramey was telling me this the other day of VolQuest.com that he was down there covering the game and Tennessee won. And people forget, it did not, like Bruce at Tennessee hit the ground running with a really good team. It took a while for, really it was Bruce's fourth team that got good down there. Yeah. And he was telling me that remember sitting in the media room after the game and all the media people talking about Auburn, talking about, he's like, I'm not sure if this thing for Bruce is going to work out at Auburn. Like I think Auburn might be looking for a new coach pretty soon, and obviously that has not proved to be the case. But the last the last time Tennessee won at Auburn, the Auburn media were questioning whether Bruce Pearl was the right man for the job after the game. And even if Tennessee pulls the upset on Saturday, I don't think anybody's going to be asking that.
No, I don't think so. Remind me or correct me if I'm wrong. I think he just became the winningest coach in Auburn men's basketball history.
Is that I did not see that, but that would completely check out. I have a hard. I mean, he's been there. This is his 11th year. Auburn really has no basketball history. So I'd be pretty surprised. Honestly, the fact that he's just now breaking it is a little bit of a surprise to me. I say without, maybe they had someone coach there for 15 years or something. You just rack up a number of wins by being, we call that Jeff Fisher. You rack up a lot of wins by being mediocre for a really long time.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know all too well about that as a Titans fan. And my dad with the Rams as well.
Yep. No one could go 8-8 like Jeff Fisher.
That's sure as shit. You're correct. All right, let's talk a little baseball to finish things off here. The Vols ranked fourth overall and third in the SEC in terms of rankings heading into the season. Obviously, they won the national championship last year. There are going to be some big names in the lineup that aren't going to be there this season. No Simo, Blake Burke, Billy Amick, Dylan Dreiling, Kavaris Tears. And then on the bump, you lose Drew Beams, Andrew Sechrist, Kirby Cannell, Aaron Combs, AJ Causey. So talk to me a little bit about how they go about replacing guys like that. I know they've added guys on the transfer portal. They've, obviously recruited guys. They've got recruiting class and things like that. Get people up to speed, since I obviously know you're in the know when it comes to baseball, and yet a lot of people are still in football mode and they haven't even gotten to basketball, and then we got baseball coming up. But for those diehards and those people that are looking forward to the baseball season, talk to me a little bit about how they're going to fill some of these holes with various guys that they have coming in or that are already in place.
It's certainly a combination of things. You look in the lineup, Tennessee essentially has two full-time starters back from a year ago, and Dean Curley at shortstop and Hunter Inslee in center field. Now, what's been, to me, one of the most impressive parts of Tony Vitello's tenure is the way guys who've waited in the program and have had roles consistently step up. They're going to need that. They're going to need Cannon Peebles behind the plate, who came in as a really big name in the portal last year from NC State. At this time last year, anybody with any sort of knowledge of the Tennessee baseball program would have told you he would have been Tennessee's starting catcher. He struggled. He lost that job to Cal Stark, but then played well down the stretch of the season, was in the DH role some, was a good pinch hitter for Tennessee, and had a really good fall. So Tennessee needs him to be good. They need, you look at Reese Chapman, who's a guy that was in competition to start in right field, to start at DH last year, was in the DH rotation some. They need him to be good. They need him to step up and find consistency. Dalton Bargo, who was a Missouri transfer coming in last year, similar way. He was in that DH spot some. People might remember he hit 2 home runs in Game 3 of the Knoxville Super Regional against Evansville that sent Tennessee to Omaha. They need him to be good. And they particularly need him to be good now because he was in competition to start at first base. And his main competition, Alex Perry, left the Tennessee program due to some personal matter earlier this month. So he's kind of the main guy at first base now. So that's a big part of it. You need Tennessee needs what they've had consistently under Tony Vitello, which is players that have been in the program, that have been top bench guys or fringe starters. They need those guys to step up and be good. And then a transfer portal not a huge class, but one I think they did a really, really good job in. Again, one that, pretty consistently ranked top 5 nationally, had some really big names. Andrew Fisher from Ole Miss at 20 home runs, or maybe it was 19 home runs last year, but he's going to hit 20 home runs this year. Feel confident of that. Gavin Keelan. I think it's Keelan. I always forget how to pronounce his last name. Yeah, I think it's Keelan, not Kylan. I was calling him Kylan for a long time, and finally one of the coaches told me it's Keelan. I think it's Keelan. I've forgotten. But he'll probably yourself. That's right. He hit like 330 at Louisville last year, like 25 plus extra base hits. I think he'll probably start at second base for Tennessee with Curley at shortstop. He played short mostly at Louisville last year, but I think Curley's going to hold on to that spot at short. So those two guys are two real main bats in the order that Tennessee added in the transfer portal that I think are going to be good. And then, a really talented freshman class that ranked first or second nationally. I think it was maybe second and then maybe first when you factor in the guys that went to the MLB draft. Obviously, that's the challenge. I mean, these coaches, it's tough. The challenge of recruiting really good kids that aren't going to go into the draft. A number of guys that are going to get opportunities for Tennessee, I think, are good players. Jay Abernathy, I bet, will start in left field. He's down from Atlanta, that neck of the woods. He was a middle infielder, but almost worked exclusively in the outfield in fall practice. Really, really fast guy. Good hit to contact, a little bit of pop in the bat too. I think he's kind of one of those guys you pencil him into the 9 spot, and he may not be the best bat, but he's solid. He's got really good vision at the plate too, and you just kind of trust. All right, he can make some stuff happen. So my bet is that he will. I don't know about opening day. Tony Vitello always loves to have the yearly veteran, good locker room guy opening day start. My guess is Colby Backus will get that in left field this year. You've been in the program multiple years type start. But I think Jay Abernathy will end up being a starter somewhere by the end of the season. And there's a number. I mean, Manny Morrell is a really talented freshman infielder. Levi Clark's a great bat. The catcher from down in Georgia too. Got a little bit of run at first base. He could probably be an option there, be a DH guy. So I'm listing a lot of names. The freshman stuff's always difficult to know. But that's what that first month of the season's for. I mean, Tennessee will play like 3 pretty good opponents the first month of the season, and they'll play a lot of teams that they'll beat the brains out of, and they'll get a lot of those young guys reps, and those guys will have opportunities to prove themselves and get a role once they get into SEC play.
What about the staff?
Yeah, so the staff is probably the transfer I'm most excited about. Liam Doyle from Ole Miss, left-handed pitcher. Pretty like he was Ole Miss a Saturday starter last year. Relatively pedestrian numbers. I think like a sub 5 ERA. He was pretty unreal in the fall. I wish I had, because I tracked the numbers from, I watched him pitch like 6 or 7 times. I think I saw him throw like 14 innings. Don't believe he gave up a run. Maybe it was 1 run, like 18 strikeouts. And this is all just a range, like 3 or 4 hits. He was dominant. So I think he's going to be that Saturday or the Friday night guy. Tegan Coons would be my pick to be the Saturday starter. He's a true freshman, right-handed arm, high 90s fastball, good off-speed stuff. And then Nate Snead, probably their most proven pitcher back. I think they'll keep him in the bullpen personally. It's an option for him. They could start him, but I think he's going to be more of a bullpen guy. And then you have the same thing that I said about players that have kind of had fringe roles needing to step up. That's the same way on the mound too. Andrew Binke had a role in the bullpen, albeit a small one last year. He's back. Dylan Loy pitched some big. I mean, Dylan Loy got in, I believe, in Game 3 of the College World Series, if I'm not mistaken. One of those games, he got in and pitched some big innings for Tennessee down the stretch. He was a freshman. He's a guy from Upper East Tennessee. He would probably be my pick as we sit here in 22. Tony Vitello days out from the start of the season. He would be my pick for the guy that ends up as Tennessee's Sunday starter, kind of a soft throwing lefty. And then there's Marcus Phillips, who's a little erratic, the 6'5" guy who throws upper 90s. Similar thing, had a role in the bullpen last year, albeit a small one. Consistency is the key word for him. So those guys need to step up. And it's just a lot of options. They added Tanner Franklin from Kennesaw State, tall right-handed arm in the transfer portal. They added a pair of junior college pitchers. Brandon Arvidsson is a left-handed arm. I think will will make an impact. Aaron Combs' little brother, actually, Ryan Combs, is a true freshman on this team. And you watch him pitch, the delivery, everything looks the exact same as Aaron, or as his older brother Aaron. He doesn't quite have the sweeper that Aaron did, but he has a really good changeup. I think he could push for a role as a true freshman. So it's a lot of guys. Kind of, you have a few guys we're going to be at the top. We're going to have big roles, and a couple newcomers in Doyle and Coons, a couple returners in Loy and Nate Snead and Andrew Binky. But past that, there's a lot of guys I think there's reason for optimism, of a lot of solid options, and we'll see what the role will be. And I'll be remiss. I mean, the big X factor in all this is A.J. Russell, who, man, it was early in the season when he pitched. So I don't know how much anybody watched him, but, man, he was just stellar in his freshman year in a small role, unhittable early last season before he had the arm injury. I think he was Tennessee's Friday night starter to open the year last year, and in 5 innings against Texas Tech, struck out 10 guys, and was just looked untouchable. He has Tommy John late in the, I think about at the time the team was headed to Omaha, so in the postseason. But it was a little bit of a not full-scale Tommy John, I guess, to say. I'll have to say the timetable is not quite as extensive for a return. I think if everything goes well, he can probably start throwing again at the start of March, which would, if everything goes well, lead to him maybe being back on the mound in games in April. So that's a huge X factor because he's such a talented guy. I mean, he could not throw this year, and he might be a top 2-3 round pick in the MLB draft this year, which would be a shame for Tennessee fans because of how, did not truly get to watch him much in his college career. But he's a really, really good dude. One of my favorite guys on the team, and a super, super talented guy. And if Tennessee can get him near his potential, near what he was last year before he got hurt for the back half of the season, I mean, that would be an arm that would really change things for Tennessee the back half of the season.
No doubt about it. Great stuff, Rye. Appreciate the insight and the knowledge, all that good stuff. Before I let you go, I have 2 very important questions. First of all, how has the food scene been? I know you haven't traveled a ton for basketball, but you've been a couple of different places. I believe I saw some incredible looking barbecue on your Instagram feed not too long ago. So talk to me about the food scene that you've gotten to check out traveling wise.
Yeah, Terry Black's in Austin was pretty unbelievable. I'm a big brisket guy, so Texas by default, Texas barbecue is my favorite barbecue. So that was incredible. Also learned about it from a friend who lives in Austin who I ate with. There's a barbecue battle between the Black family. There's Black's barbecue and Terry Black's barbecue. Look up the article on it. Fascinating stuff, like college football rivalry type stuff with those 2 groups. I went to a place, I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, in Champaign for the Illinois game that was good too. But I had some sliders there that was really good and some incredible cheese curds. Maybe like 7 Saints. Are you a Sopranos guy?
No, I never watched The Sopranos, unfortunately.
There's a Sopranos spinoff or like prequel that's like something Saints in Newark, and I know this place had a similar name to that. So I think it's something to do with Saints. But going down to Auburn this weekend, I'll be with my family. I have some family, brother and his family in Birmingham. Stay with them Friday night. So hoping my favorite barbecue place east of the Mississippi River is Saw's Juke Joint down in Birmingham, Alabama. So hoping I'll get that on Friday night, but haven't fully discussed that. I know we're going to eat somewhere, but we haven't ironed it out yet. So hopeful to get that. I love me some barbecue, and that's usually when I'm on the road. That's the place or the food type that I'm hunting and find.
Yeah, but if it's up to you, you know where you're going.
If it's up to me, I know where we're going. But we got a 4-year-old in the scene. We got like an 18-month-year-old. 18-month-old. I'm not dictating the terms. I'll be flexible and go where works for everybody.
You're a good man. All right, my last question. Since I'm wearing this Boy Meets World T-shirt, I have to know, who is your favorite character on Boy Meets World if you watched it?
Never seen it.
Damn you, Ryan Schumpert. We can't all be perfect. I get it.
Yeah. I guess I'm just thinking you can't watch both The Sopranos and Boy Meets World. Maybe
I guess not. We're both very disappointing in this episode of the show, show-wise. Yeah,
I'm shocked though. I would have bet a good bit that last question would have been, what do you want me? What do I want the Titans to do with the first overall pick?
Oh, well, I mean, that's a great question as well. What would you like the Titans to do with the first overall pick?
Well, I don't have a great answer because I have no idea what I want the Titans to do with the first overall pick. Shoot. I would lean Abdul Carter because I think he's the best combination of best player in the draft / need for the Titans. But I don't know. I wouldn't blame him for taking a quarterback. And look, watching Jayden Daniels has me drunk on Cam Ward's potential, even though I think he's maybe very low floor and could very much see him be Will Levis again. The ceiling's there. So I'm sure if they draft a quarterback, I'll talk myself into him by the time September rolls around.
Yeah, when I watched Cam Ward, he really gave me sort of like Patrick Mahomes light vibes in terms of his improvisation, or even, and I know this name is going to sound bad. Obviously, nobody likes this dude nowadays, but like early Deshaun Watson type of vibes.
Yeah.
Like when he was actually, not,
Good.
yeah, when he was actually good, with the Texans, and
Yeah, he's like
not,
top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he was. And that's why the Browns paid him all that money. But
crazy fall off.
It really has a crazy fall off.
I don't know what to make of Cam Ward. The turnovers were bad. He made a lot of bad mistakes. But yeah, like you said, the improvisation was pretty incredible. And he was playing for a team whose defense didn't get a stop after the calendar turned into October. So there wasn't a whole lot of room for that offense to not have scoring drives. So some of it I kind of get,
Yeah. No, you're definitely.
I can talk myself into it for sure.
You're definitely not wrong. Well, Ryan Schumpert, check him out, RockyTopInsider.com. He writes all the great articles, baseball, basketball, football, all the good stuff. And you can also check him out on the RTI Press Pass podcast, wherever you get your podcasts as well. Check it out. He does a great job on the podcast, as you hear him here, and how you used to hear him every Thursday on The Word with G on ESPN Chattanooga. Long live it. And it's good to get back with you, my friend, on a Vol Talk Thursday. Even though when this is going to be released, it's going to be a Friday, but we're recording on a Thursday. So for me, it's officially a Vol Talk Thursday. And you can follow him on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at rshump00.
Enjoyed it as always. It is a little. I mean, I've joined you on the pod a few times, and it's been a good time every single time. But when it's a Vol Talk Thursday, a little extra special.
It hits a little different,
just
my friend.
A little bit different.
Yeah, and it hasn't been just you and I in a while. I feel like it's, you usually come on with the guys, which I love, but there's a special place in my heart for a Vol Talk Thursday when it's just you and I.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Ryan, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, appreciate having me on.